hi, I'm Scott. I work on the security and management team, been at the company for a while. I promise you that I will not keep you bored. I don't promise you that I will go slow. Raise your hand, yell and shout if I'm speaking too quickly in my New Zealand accent. Please do. I have a lot of content to cover here in a 45-minute session, which was my attempt to make sure that as the coffee is kicking in, that you guys are entertained. And I'm going to spend some time on slides, but as much as possible on demos. So fundamentally, we're just going to set up with one slide that frames, what's different in management and security as you move to the cloud. And the first one's kind of obvious. It used to be that central IT was the center of all IT projects. And now with the cloud, central IT absolutely plays a very important role. But business units are all out there doing cloud projects, and outsourcers are helping with cloud projects, and development teams are doing some work that IT was historically doing. There is a proliferation of users out there that are doing different things. And they have a varying skill set in terms of understanding the need for security and management. And frankly, we see that on the virtual machines, for example, that are running on Azure. Not every virtual machine on Azure is secure and well managed. Actually, a lot aren't following that best practice. And so it's important that whether you're a developer, whether you're in IT or central IT or a third party, that you understand the best practices on Azure that enable you to do security and management. The second one is kind of goes without saying. In the security space, stuff gets more and more sophisticated over time. Most recently, ransomware is a big deal. We'll spend some time on that. But that level of sophistication means we need more advanced solutions that frankly have intelligence built into it, because the old-fashioned way of kind of grabbing a data set from here and a data set from here and a data set from here and munging the data and then trying to figure out what went wrong is too slow and too challenging. So you need intelligence and machine learning to help you figure out when you've been attacked, because you are being attacked, what happened and how to mitigate against it. And then fundamentally, the third one, one of the reasons you went to the cloud, your CTO, your CEO went to the cloud is for business agility. They want to get stuff done faster. And when you're getting stuff done faster, you're deploying much more rapidly. You're using DevOps practices. But when you do that, you do want to make sure that you're applying security and management, but not slowing people down. Because that's just not acceptable in today's business cycle. So how do you do that as an enabler as opposed to a blocker? So the first point that I really want to get across, that I'm guessing most of the people in this room get, but as you get more senior in your organizations, it may not be the case, so I really want to hammer this, is that when it comes to security and management on Azure, there is fundamentally a joint commitment between Microsoft, and every single one of you who are customers on the platform. Some people think, I just put my stuff in Azure and it's secure. I just put my stuff in Azure and I don't need to do as much management as I did before. Actually, it's kind of true. You don't need to do the same management you did before. We certainly own the data centers. We do the concrete building of the data centers. We own the machines. We certainly provision those machines when hard disks fail and networks need to be fixed. We do all of that stuff. So you're right. But some people have extended beyond that to a level where, frankly, we need you to own your workloads and the management and security of your workloads and follow best practices to be secure, in addition to the foundation work that we do. So yeah, we build the data centers, we build the infrastructure, we do operations on those data centers, so we have a limited number of people with just-in-time access who operate the software layer. We even have software in Azure that you guys can't play with. We do have a new DDoS service that you can play with, but DDoS in general, denial of service in general, and making sure that denial of service attacks don't affect you as a customer, is an operation that Microsoft provides for you on your behalf with no dials. So there's a lot of things we do from the concrete all the way through the software. However, the minute you put a workload on Azure, one virtual machine, you need to be thinking about management and security. Just one virtual machine, okay? And certainly with virtual machines, there's more to think about than there are with PaaS services, because with those PaaS services, we actually take some of the responsibilities. So as you go into microservices and beyond, there's less that you need to do, but there's not nothing you need to do. in security and management. And this is really important because I've talked to lots of IT guys whose management doesn't understand that management and security in terms of the work you do and roles that should exist within your organization is critical in the cloud. And while I could give you the overview of all of the things you could do in management and security, and there's a poster that you can get at the door that's hanging here that will give you that view, in the 45 minutes that I have here, I'm going to take a tactical approach. And I'm going to say, when I look at the virtual machines that are running on Azure today, that are production virtual machines, what are the 3 things that I think people need to do that maybe they're not doing as much as they should? Okay? And those 3 things are securing your resources. It's kind of a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how few people are doing this today. Backing up your resources, and then getting monitoring. And so fundamentally, securing, protecting, and monitoring are 3 critical things that every single virtual machine, just have one in production on your Azure, you should be applying to it. And as I say, all of the big companies are doing this, but many aren't. So why do I feel so passionate about that? Like, what is it that you need to be able to do from a security perspective? Well, fundamentally, from a security perspective, your first challenge, particularly once you go beyond one virtual machine to having organizations that have not just many virtual machines, but many subscriptions, is how do you get visibility into what you have running on Azure? As a general IT guy or a security guy, how do I know what's running on Azure? How do I know the security state of that? Are my virtual machines encrypted? Am I using the latest updates, et cetera, et cetera? I would love to see that all in one place. So that's an important piece. And then once I've got visibility, that only helps me if I can take action. So what are the actions that I need to take to protect those virtual machines to mitigate the opportunity for bad actors to attack me? So I need to go do that work. And then finally, well, it never feels comfortable to say this, we're in a world where your workloads are being attacked every single hour of the day, particularly if they're in the public internet. And it doesn't matter whether they're in your data center or my data center, they're being attacked. And so you should absolutely be assuming that you've been breached and work backwards from that in addition to protecting it. And so how do you manage threats? How do you understand where those threats come from? Fortunately, Microsoft can help you a great deal there because of all of the malware information that we have in our security intelligent graph that provides a ton of detail for that. So how do you get that done? Well, let me show you, rather than staying in slides, some of the capabilities that we have in the product with Azure Security Center. Let's see, looks like I got the wrong one. If the presenter can click the right buttons, life would be better. There we go. Okay, cool. So this is Azure. Here I am in my dashboard. What you can see here, just as an aside, is I have a custom dashboard that was created for me. I would recommend for many customers that you do create custom dashboards that just give you the view that you're interested in. What I'm going to do here is go into Azure Security Center. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get visibility into our resources. By the way, this piece is 100% free. Okay? It is included with your Azure subscription. I have no idea why there's lots of people who have not turned on an agent. This is what you need to do here. To enable Azure Security Center to collect information from your VMs. That's how it works technically, so that it can present it here. If you're running on Azure, please go and enable the agent collection at the end of the session, and you'll get this information once again for free. So you can see a broad set of recommendations here. I prefer this view, which shows me a view in this case of my virtual machines. The purple virtual machines, as it turns out, are actually running on premises. Because if you don't have a security solution on premises for this type of thing, Azure Security Center can do that too. But I'm going to focus on running in Azure today. And so here you can see a set of virtual machines that are running in Azure, and you can see their security posture. I like to call this the Christmas tree light view. You can see whether they're being monitored, whether they have the security agent. you can see that this one's missing system updates. It doesn't have endpoint protection. It's in a bit of a problematic place in general. And so if I go click into that, then you can even drill in and take action, okay? So I have a security update that I need to apply and disk encryption that I need to apply. So this is really the first step in hardening your overall approach to providing security, is understanding what you put out there in the real estate and enabling it. Okay, makes sense? There is another piece that is coming / in limited preview, just so you know, which is this notion of Azure policy, where you can set a set of policies that say, actually, no virtual machine on my subscription may run unless the disk is encrypted, okay? So you can actually enforce a priori, if you wish, a set of policies that mean you're not in the state, and you can also monitor or audit against that, as you can see here, to apply it. So everybody should be doing this. This is a critical part of any security approach on Azure. Okay, cool. So the second piece is then threats. And there's a couple of pieces that I want to cover off in threats. The first is being proactive relative to threats. And we call this thing just-in-time VM access. If you put a virtual machine, or actually just a PC, on the internet with an open RDP port, I can guarantee you that it will be brute force attacked. I can guarantee you. And in particular, if it's on any provider that attackers know exist, whether it be Amazon, whether it be Azure, whether it be your hosting provider, I can guarantee it will be attacked. And the number of attacks per month is in the thousands, okay? This is really scary. And there's a couple of answers to that problem. One is to get off the public internet and use ExpressRoute. And frankly, I'd recommend that for as many companies that can afford it. It provides you a low latency, direct to Azure connection that the bad guy can't even get to. So please use that. Even on top of that, and certainly if you're using the public internet to go access your management ports to manage your virtual machines, the out-of-the-box solution from Azure or any of the other cloud providers is insufficient in my opinion. What you really want to be able to do is have a set of management ports that are open when you need them and closed when you're not using them. And that way, the attackers are not attacking when you're not managing, which dramatically decreases your threat surface. And I can tell you that RDP brute force is one of the primary, if not the primary way to go get a machine owned on Azure, okay? And so to mitigate against that, we have just-in-time virtual machine access, which does exactly what I described. You can see here a set of virtual machines that do not today have just-in-time virtual machine access on them and therefore are vulnerable to RDP brute force and other attacks. I can go in here and enable just-in-time virtual machine on this. I can choose which ports I want to enable and the time ranges I want to enable it on, and go ahead and save it. So if it's terminal services, it's usually 3389 unless I changed it to some custom port, which of course I can do as well. And then I'm good. And then subsequently, for those virtual machines that have been configured to use just-in-time access, which is this set, anytime a user wants to go get access, I go ahead and request access. I choose the port that I want. I choose the time frame I need it for, because I only need it for an hour. If I happen to have permissions, it instantly opens the port. If I don't, it sends an email to an administrator who approves or denies, depending on who I am, and off I go. And suddenly the attack surface here for the bad guys is dramatically smaller. So I would strongly recommend that you, for every production virtual machine that has management ports on it, turn on the just-in-time access functionality. This is paid functionality. This and the next feature that I'll show you, threat protection, are a base price of $15 per month per virtual machine for the security and peace of mind. Okay, everybody with me still? Am I talking too fast for people? You guys awake? All right. Okay, cool. Let's do the next thing. So the next thing is security alerts. And this is really when something's gone wrong. And so this is showing you what are the active attacks that are happening inside your set of infrastructure. And once again, this could be running on-premises infrastructure as well as Azure, because we span both of those. And here you can see what is often the case, which is a set of individual pieces of information. So you can see this suspicious process. You can see this RDP brute force attack. You can see another suspicious process. But frankly, knowing that information makes it really, really hard, if that's all you've got, to figure out what's going on. As a security person, you have to spelunk, to use an inappropriate term for those of you who know, through the data to really understand who did attack me and what's the problem. We think you can do better than that. And so we take all of this information and we correlate it together into an incident. And then we enable you to visualize that incident. And so here you can see, if I make it bigger, what is not the easiest thing to present on the screen, an attack that has taken a set of data and recognized that one piece relates to the next piece, relates to the next piece, relates to the next piece. And suddenly you can see what went wrong, how it went wrong, and what you need to do to fix it. And so you can see this security incident started with a brute force. That brute force was on a server. That server had a user that looks like they signed in from an unfamiliar location. That user also has done some additional work here. And sorry if I go back up there. And as a result, I can follow the attack chain, okay? They have a suspicious process on a server. I better clean that up. And so right away, I can visualize what the problem is and how to solve it. This is a massive time saver compared to the traditional ways that people do threat protection. And you can go ahead and you can explore deeper over here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, once I choose an issue, to understand the details of a specific issue. And we even have playbooks that enable you to run a predefined, if you like, script or take action based on this particular threat, okay? So this is a really big deal in making it really easy for you to understand what's going on. Now, in the limited period of time we have, that's the level of depth I'm going to give you on security. There are full security sessions at the conference. My one takeaway would, well, maybe two takeaways. For everybody who has a production virtual machine on Azure, turn on the free Azure Security Center. For everybody who has a production virtual machine on Azure, seriously consider turning on threat protection, because in particular that JIT functionality, especially if I'm not using ExpressRoute, I would consider it vital if I was an enterprise customer to securing my workloads on Azure. All right, make sense, guys? Cool. Let's go to the next. Quickly, there's a bunch of customers, obviously, that have used this technology. iCertis is one of them who's excited about the level of productivity that they get in the case of using Azure Security Center. And you saw some of those productivity features. Less kind of sifting through data and noise, more taking action is really where we're focused from a product perspective. And there is a lot of machine learning that is going on behind things. And you should also know that Security Center is constantly updating. It's not a static anything. It's a constantly updating approach, unlike other clouds. By the way, other clouds don't have the functionality that I just described at all. And I mean AWS when I say other clouds, just to be clear. Okay, cool. Azure Backup. So let's talk about this. So this is one where I suspect you also get this. But gosh, there's so much confusion when I talk to people on backup. Backup is part of a broader strategy on high availability. If you start at the beginning on high availability, you have an app. You want that app to be always running. So you have two virtual machines and you put them together in an availability set or a scale set, right? And that makes the app continually run, and if one goes down, the other one keeps going. That's app availability part one. And then there's app availability part two, which is, well, what if that location got bombed? What if, south of, this is good, isn't it? I'm going to the good scenarios. What if the southern area of the United States, something went wrong and our Azure data center didn't exist anymore, but your app still needs to provide to your customers? Well, then you use disaster recovery, that is an application availability concept. It's available in Azure, to replicate that application to a different region, okay? That's not backup. That's application availability. And you should use that for any application that you want to be available 24/7. And it also works for your on-premises, by the way, if your data center goes down to Azure. We enable that scenario. So you want that. You also, in addition, even if you have that, need backup. Backup is a data construct. I have a set of data. It might get corrupted. Someone might fat finger delete it. I need to be able to recover the data that I had to some prior state. That's what Azure Backup does. That's what backup in general does. And so with 30% of these types of errors, frankly, happening from humans fat fingering, I accidentally deleted a record in the SQL database. It doesn't matter that in Azure I have that SQL database copied on 3 different disks, so I have 3 copies of the deleted record. What I really want to do is get the record back. Okay, or I have an application and the application has some corruption and it corrupts some data. Those are the types of scenarios that we protect for with Azure Backup. It's very common. And in fact, on Azure Backup today, more than a quarter of, let me start again on that one. Today on Azure, more than a quarter of the virtual machines are backed up using Azure Backup. So the good news is lots of customers have figured this out. The bad news is, I would imagine that every production virtual machine should be backed up so it can be restored, okay? And I know that more than 25% of the VMs on Azure are used for production. So let me explain to you what Azure Backup is, once again, rather than in slides, by giving you a quick demo. And let's see if I can figure out my screens right. Look at that, I did. Okay, cool. And so now let's go over here. So I'm going to start in a scary place with Azure Backup. And that scary place is ransomware. Because fat fingering is one thing, and it certainly happens. But as you know, I think it was $7 billion the FBI said was going to be lost this year for ransomware. And that was before WannaCry and the following attacks. So this is really a big deal. And you need to be protected from it. So here's my ransomware virtual machine that happens to be running on Azure. Somebody did something not good from a best practice perspective to get here. But hey, that's where we're at right now. Often cases, I'm in all types of trouble, right? I have a MySQL database. My MySQL database is not my SQL database anymore. It's owned. You can see it's owned in this case by something like WannaCry. That's super scary. But what's even scarier, guys, is the people that build this type of malware. They're in it to make money, right? That's what they're in it for. And they don't get paid if you have a backup copy you can just restore. That's a bad day for them and not a great day for you, but better than if your backup copy gets deleted. And so sadly, there is malware out there that understands the common backup agents, because you have to have a backup agent running on the machine to pump data up to some store, whether it be on premises or the cloud, and compromise that process, because they're admin on the machine already, and then go ahead and attack the backup copy. And a typical way you might do that, in the case of Azure Backup, would be to run this script, okay? This particular script happens to be the script that if you're a administrator who's a good guy and you wanted to delete a backup copy, you'd run something like this. And I can tell you, for many backup products, this script run by a bad actor would delete your backup copy. And then you have a really, really bad day. Let's see what happens on Azure. And I'll show you how you set this up. On Azure, you get an error code. And the reason you get an error code is that your Azure backups are protected by multi-factor authentication, okay? And it's just-in-time multi-factor authentication, which is actually pretty similar to the just-in-time RDP port blocking or port blocking that you saw earlier. As an admin, I choose to grant myself access to the backups to perform an admin activity for a period of 5 minutes. I get a unique security pin. It isn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a unique security pin. That security pin is active for the 5 minutes that I'm doing administration, and then it goes away. And the next time I come back, it's a different number. So it makes it very, very hard for an attacking process to brute force your backup. So if you have a current backup solution, do check whether it enables multi-factor authentication so that you can ensure that your backup copy is safe from ransomware. Okay, cool. I'm going to show you how you set that up in the Azure portal. But first, I'm going to take one big step backwards and actually show you how to restore the VM in the first place. One of the really, really important things that we think we can do to simplify the way that we do security and management, that frankly isn't yet what Amazon's doing, is make it built-in, okay? There shouldn't be what there always has been, which is a line between the management and security software that you used to deploy separately and had a separate user experience, and the runtime software. You know, with System Center and Windows Server, they work well together, but it's two different deployments, two different user experiences. We try and make it seamless, but it's not one product, right? We tried. It's on-premises box software, but it's not one product. In Azure, we can make it feel like it's one product because it's one product. And that can make a dramatic difference to your productivity when it comes to applying these types of functions. So what you see in front of you here is not some menu system for a security product. It's not some menu system for a management product. It's not running on some separate virtual machine that I have to manage. It's a built-in software as a service that automatically updates, just like Security Center. So I don't have to worry about that. And what this is the virtual machine blade, okay? This is not anything management. This is virtual machines. This is the same thing I go to when I set up compute, network, and storage. Once I've got that set up, this is the view of my virtual machine. And you can see down here that I have a whole range of management functions, one of which is backup, right there, right integrated in. And what's more, although I won't demo it for time reasons, when I go create a virtual machine for the first time, file, new virtual machine, I can turn a slider, backup on, and I'm done. It's that easy. And so guys, this makes it so much easier for you to go ahead and do these really important operations. So if I go into backup, you can see that fortunately that virtual machine that was just compromised in fact has backup copies. And so I can go select a restore point, go and choose one of those, and click OK. And off I am going, and I'll go ahead and restore my virtual machine. Okay? So restoring, super simple. And then the one other thing I was going to show you in backup is if I go to what we call a recovery services vault, this is where we store the virtual machines. Look into properties, go over here. What I showed you before was that we had multi-factor authentication. Yep, I want multi-factor authentication on. That's all I need to do. And then anytime I want to go do this, I generate a security pin. I want to do an admin task. That's the pin that I use for the next 5 minutes. And then it goes away, turns into pixie dust. Okay? So this is really, really simple. It's 3 clicks to back up a virtual machine. It backs up right into Azure, so you don't have to worry about tapes, and you don't have to worry about anything, actually. It's just very automatic. It's fast to restore. It has built-in multi-factor authentication. As I said, every production virtual machine, you can tell me whether you want to do your dev test ones, I'm fine. But every production virtual machine, in my opinion, should have the data backed up. This is a very simple way to do that. Using Azure, and as I say, we have a lot of customer adoption here already, but there's a lot of opportunity as we continue to put production workloads on Azure. Okay, that was backup quickly. How am I doing on time? Hey, I'm doing okay. All right, and once again, there's a number of other customers, case studies that we could spend time on. In many cases, people have moved from other cloud providers who provided a slower SLA on recovery. You know, time to recovery is always a big deal in backup, and so it's important to have a fast time to recovery. They found it was a simpler experience, or frankly, they were just using Azure, and so it was just there. They might have something else on premises, that's totally fine, but it was far simpler to use what was built into Azure for the Azure workloads and continuing to use whatever their historical process was on premises. There's no requirement here to make a company-wide decision on any of these things. In fact, part of the problem, I think, in terms of people following this best practice is they're a little hung up on my company has X, Y, Z, and it might take a long time to integrate with that versus, gee, I really need to turn these things on quickly. And so in the interim time, they get really exposed versus just turn these things on and use them. Okay, cool. So my third area is monitoring. And monitoring is one of those areas where monitoring is not an area that is often celebrated from a business outcome or value perspective. It's the area that is critical to reduce the amount of time that you spend when things go wrong. And you guys know that things go wrong. And so the less time you spend there, the more time you spend on adding business value. And so in Azure, what we're fundamentally doing is building what I think of as DevOps monitoring. There used to be these firewalls between traditional IT monitoring around CPU and performance and virtual machines and infrastructure, and then application performance monitoring, where you're actually getting down to lines of code and understanding the performance of your application. Those used to be two different constructs. And in the middle was often the notion of an application that uses multiple virtual machines that was really, really hard for many of you to figure out because the person that wrote that application has left the company. There is no good documentation, and in the moment, you guys need to troubleshoot what was connected to what, because I see something going on here, but it doesn't look like that was the problem. It might be some other thing. And so that's just really hard. So how do you bring together these worlds to enable you to get visibility into a single virtual machine, into a full application with a set of virtual machines, all the way over into a single line of code, both in Azure and frankly on premises, although once again I'm going to focus on in Azure for today's short session. That's what you really need from a monitoring perspective. And when you get that, you fundamentally need a system that provides you insights and intelligence to reduce the noise level associated with monitoring. Because one of the other challenges is you can monitor and collect tons of data, but which one's important and which one isn't? It's a little bit like following that security path. When do I know it's important? So once again, I'm going to go back to my custom dashboard that is pretty easy to build, by the way. You just go up here into Edit Dashboard and start pinning and dragging and dropping to it. And then similarly, as you noticed, I have a custom menu system which you can get to by using the hamburger and favoriting things in the menu. Over here, you can see I have a number of monitoring things. This one is my CPU consumption by computer. Okay, so this is very basic IT monitoring. This will show me across a set of virtual machines what's CPU looking like at a glance. You can see there's this yellow one that is hitting the 80% mark. Maybe that's a machine that I should consider upsizing the virtual machine for because it's maxing on its CPU. Maybe I need something stronger running that. So this basic monitoring I have here on the dashboard, oftentimes I want to get a little bit more detailed than that, but still stay at CPU and network and memory, those types of metrics. And here you can see another custom dashboard that I created pretty easily that shows me the view of the computer's consumption and in some more detailed views and some pie charts to just make it easier for me to consume. So, yep, of course, we can give you CPU, network, health monitoring. That stuff's important. Oftentimes, to solve a problem, this is just not detailed enough. This is your starting point. And so you really need to drill in a more detailed manner. And I'm going to skip a bunch to get you here. But just to frame, if I go back here and I look at this chart, I'm like, that's interesting, but I wish I could understand more details on this performance. And so what we have here is a very flexible, very low latency, very high volume, SQL-like, but not exactly SQL, query language that does both search and query, okay? So it can do both relational and unrelational, to enable you to get deep insights into what's actually going on in your system and correlate data, okay? By the way, this works for the security stuff in the back end too. If you want to dive really deep into the security stuff and all of our recommendations, you want to go beyond, you can do that here. Because one of our key assets here is we share the same underlying, I'll call it log database and query language across both our IT monitoring, our application monitoring, and our security. They're all going into one place, which makes it dramatically easier for you to follow information as it goes across this. Now, I'm not going to do a lesson here on how to write this, but just quickly, what I did here was write a quick query that was a custom query that looked at just the CPU performance for any computer that's name starts with store or store group, or starts with Contoso or Contoso group, or starts with other. Then just for giggles, I averaged it, showed the performance over the last hour, and rendered a time chart. Don't ask me why I'd use exactly this query. I just wanted to geek out and show you the language, right? There's a ton of, you could take CPU and memory and put them together, and I want all the high CPU, high memory usage, high network bandwidth usage machines in the last hour. That might be a more rational query. This is multivariate analysis with some really flexible grouping that then enables you to visualize, or of course you can get the raw data you're processing. I would once again recommend, this is the log analytics functionality in Azure. This is what this is called. I would recommend that every customer take advantage of this functionality, because when things are going wrong, this really gives you an opportunity to understand in a detail-oriented way. And while if you're new to this language might look a little scary, I can tell you that this technology was used inside Microsoft by literally 10,000 users inside Microsoft, which, given our company size, which is more than 100,000 but not that much more, is a lot of people. And our experience in this was the learning curve on this was not particularly high. And in particular, it looks kind of similar to SQL really helps people. So this is the query language there. Once you get beyond a single virtual machine, then things usually get complicated. But not when you've got Azure on your side. Okay, this graph does look somewhat complicated, but let me explain to you what it's showing you. Remember that scenario I described? We've all had it. There's a performance problem. It's happening on the web server. Is it the web server's fault? Is it the database's fault? Is it the application tier's fault? Remind me which machine is the actual machine that is the database? Remind me which, we've all been there, right? You have to kind of figure it out in real time. There's no map that shows you what connects to what connects to what. Well, now there is, okay? So what you see here is that same web server actually that was compromised with ransomware. You see the processes that are running on that server. You see the incoming clients, and you see the back-end connectivity it has. So right away I know that this is the SQL database that it is connected to. And actually, I'll click on here first. And so I can see that there's some issues. I can see that there's some failed connections and some security issues, and something looks a bit funny. And I have been having performance issues. I'm curious whether the performance issues are happening because of some lock contention in the SQL database. Let me go look at that SQL database. Well, memory utilization looks pretty good. It's 56%. And yeah, there's a few spikes here, but it does not look like the SQL database is causing my problem. It does not look like the SQL database is at 100% CPU and I've got a challenge. So maybe let me go back to that web server and click into here. Oops, we get back here. And you can see, that's kind of interesting. Hang on a sec. For some reason, I'm not refreshing. There we go. I'll click on the right thing. Help me out. I need to go to summary, right? Oh, my time range is wrong? Okay. I'm going to keep going because of time. So Juan's pointing out that my time range is only in the last hour, and the performance has been good in the last hour. If we scroll down below, you'll see that the primary process on this machine is W3WP. And if we reset the time range to before the last hour, my fault for not updating the demo data, you would see that the CPU on this machine was in fact maxing out for that period of time. Okay? So the bigger picture here is with Service Map, what this is a kernel driver that installs on your machines that captures network traffic between nodes and then obviously understands the services. And so it builds a real-time, this is not some Visio diagram that I dragged and dropped, it is all connected. It builds a real-time view of the connectivity between your virtual machines to enable you to diagnose infrastructure problems that span applications, which is really powerful and something that, frankly, most people don't have today. Okay, cool. In the last few minutes, I want to go further. This really applies more to web applications, and it goes beyond the traditional IT monitoring, but just to give you the full picture of monitoring. So I had a web application which, once again, an hour ago had some significant performance issues on it. Hopefully my time window here is good, but it may have the same challenge. Let's go into that Contoso web application. Now, I know it's a web application, and this web application was actually instrumented using a technology we call application insights. Okay? This is application performance monitoring. You add a line of code into your application, you compile it, it sends information to Azure, profiling information if you like, that can be used to understand the performance. And so I can actually now understand not just infrastructure, but the application itself, okay, that web application. And so I can see the application has 82 failed requests, see that, at various time slots. That's a problem because I'm trying to serve my customers with my public-facing web application, and it's got all these issues in terms of failures. And what's worse is it looks like the failures are happening, if you see here, on this home page, which is the index page. Okay, so right away, I've gone from a web server has a CPU issue to, in this view, a specific page looks like it's causing a challenge, to, as I go even further, exactly what's wrong. And so I can view in now in a more detailed view, which takes a little bit to load, and it's going to take me down to the code so that I can understand, here's the web URL, here's the specific exception that's actually happening. It looks like there's a problem with blob storage and connecting to blob storage. Let me go reach out to the developer on this and create a new work item so that they go address that and provide them all the information. Okay? So I've spanned all the way from one virtual machine and visibility into that with traditional CPU network perf to a range of virtual machines with what we call Service Map and being able to navigate that, all the way down to, oh my goodness, a line of code that a developer can fix. And I get visibility into doing all of that. It used to take me hours when I was a developer to figure out this type of stuff. Now the information's being presented directly to you. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, cool. So just closing out quickly, once again, plenty of folks, I chose this one because it was from New Zealand. In case you didn't know, that's where my accent comes from. Using this technology for log analytics. Just to be clear, I showed you a number of monitoring technologies there. And I'll actually go back to the demo and just tell you one more thing while I'm there. But the primary technology that I recommend everybody starts with is the log analytics technology, which enables you to, am I on the wrong machine? Yeah. Which enables you to do this. Okay, so start with log analytics. And I already forgot what I was going to do. Oh yeah, the one thing I was going to show is if you're wondering the best place to get to the various services that we provide in monitoring, the best place to get to them is through Azure Monitor, okay? So Azure Monitor is like your hub for monitoring. You can get to application insights, You can get to Network Watcher, which I didn't demo today, but gives you detailed insights into the network. A set of management solutions, which go into applications. You can get to Log Analytics, which I just showed. All of it here. So this is new at this conference. We had a bunch of monitoring services that were kind of all over the place, just to be honest. Now you can get to them straight away from the Azure Monitor. So start there would be the place that I would recommend. And once again, Log Analytics is the service that you should be starting with and is frankly the foundation for everything. Cool. So from a pricing perspective, obviously we have the pay-as-you-go model. It's Azure, no difference there. Re-emphasizing, there is features of Security Center that are free in Protect and Remediate. Please take those right away, run and do it. There are features that are paid. The threat pieces are paid. Azure Backup is paid, either $5 per month for less than 50 gigs. Hopefully I'll get this right. I'm looking at my Azure Backup lady. Or $10 for greater than 50 gigs. You also pay for storage. Monitoring is also paid. It's $2.40-ish per gig for Log Analytics. But the value that you're getting out of this is really significant in securing and protecting your organization. And certainly with the pricing calculator, you can get more details of pricing than I'm going to be able to articulate here. As I close, I want to say I highlighted 3 things today that I think are really important that everybody should do as a starting point. Right? Security, backup, and monitoring. And once again, Log Analytics specifically with monitoring. If you're the guy that runs the IT department, as opposed to the guy that just put one virtual machine up there, I'm going to have a different conversation with you. Okay? Everybody who puts any virtual machines in production on Azure should absolutely be doing those 3 things. But if you're the guy doing the IT department, you have a much broader charter, and you really want to be looking across governance, you want to be looking across your DR strategy, you want to be thinking about how do you configure, patch, etc. You want to be thinking about hybrid and how do you do with on-premises as well as Azure. There are other talks at this conference that take you through this. I just want to leave you with 1, everything I showed you today works also with on-premises. And 2, there is a much broader set of services from cost management with Cloudin that we just acquired, through to site recovery, disaster recovery protection that we have in your toolbox for built-in management and security. And we in Azure are unique as a cloud platform, as Corey said in the keynote, in having this approach. We will fundamentally blur the line between management and platform to improve the productivity of everybody and the security of everybody. And we are on a track to build a full lifecycle management and security approach. That is our strategy. That is not Amazon's strategy. I will also say, just to be open, that if you have an existing management and security product and you want to run it on Azure, we would love that you did that. So we're not closed. This is not the only way you can manage things on Azure. We do want this to be the easiest way that you can manage things on Azure because we want it to be as absolutely integrated as possible and certainly cost effective. And then in closing, if you did want to carry a big piece of paper miles away, that's my negative advertising, we did build a poster that explains in detail what this little eye chart is. It's actually by the door and it's, it's here. So if you want to take that away, use it at work, go ahead. There will be digital copies online. It's not quite there, but we'll get it up immediately after the conference. This explains the broad set of services, so beyond what I just showed you today, in Azure Security and Operations Management. And I'd encourage people to take this back to their businesses and look through where you have gaps and opportunities. With that, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate any feedback on the session. And cheers, guys.